Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about important factors when considering an energy upgrade to your historic or vintage home here in the Northwest. So what types of insulation are affected by moisture? Are there some that are better than others for drawing that moisture out?
Yeah, I think if you look at the properties of things, fiberglass has been around forever. We have cellulose as a product, again, recycled paper and stuff. We have foam, which are different parts of chemistry that mix together and create a catalyst that now grows the foam and it expands out. We have products like ROCKWOOL, and ROCKWOOL's it's really rocks don't burn is kind of the idea that they have. So I've got a rock slag. Can I look at those materials and say which one has benefits over others? Now, products like ROCKWOOL have some important benefits. They can't burn. You can take them up to a couple thousand degrees, so for fire they'd be better. Insects don't like it, so insects crawl through it and they don't do so well. Moisture doesn't like it. It's kind of hydrophobic, so water really won't stay in it. If any gets in there, there's no organic matter in there to mold. So it's a pretty inert, pretty decent product. It comes in bats or in sheets. The bats are really dense. They can fit into a cavity, and I think it can be blown in cavities as well. So I think it's one of those insulations that have been around forever. I think it's about a 50-year life to it, if not more. It's been around for a long time, but it's got a resurgence and a new kind of life to it. There's a factory now in the U.S. That's making the product. So I think we've seen a lot of demand for products like that. Cellulose has been popular because of its recycled content, but when it gets wet, it holds water. And it could provide some concerns if we were really careful with it getting wet, where ROCKWOOL might be a product that could take a little more of a beating in terms of moisture than some of the other insulations.
What kind of insulation choices does a homeowner have here in the Pacific Northwest?
It's nice. There's a lot of choices, I guess. There's kind of environmentally friendlier choices, and then just insulation choices. So insulation really is the idea of trapping air, if we can, to keep it from moving. So there's fiberglass that can be blown into a cavity. There's fiberglass bats. There's cellulose, recycled newspaper print, and even some virgin paper, but we have cellulose products that can get blown in, and they have some hydric buffer abilities. They can store water a little bit. Those are kind of nice. We have spray foams, open cell foams. We have closed cell foams. We have sheet foams, some higher R value than other sheet foams. So it really depends on the application. If I'm going to maybe change a wall and add a layer of sheet foam, I could even take an old brick building and spray some spray foam on that wall. So I put an air barrier on it, maybe a fluid applied air barrier, spray some foam over the top, put some framing and some new drywall. Those are things that we can always do. In houses here, we usually have wood frame walls with wood cladding or other types of cladding. So the most common approach is if the cladding is going to stay, we then have to insulate from the inside. And that would usually be blowing insulation in cavities, either cellulose or fiberglass. And there's places that you would seal and caulk better. So that would be the most common retrofit here. And then the attics, it would almost always be blown insulation. If somebody was going to retrofit a forced air system, we see some markets where they'll put the forced air up in the attic. And that means we have to change the thermal boundary of the house and maybe put the insulation towards the roof. Or if someone wants that nice big attic to be part of a living space or a kind of a sitting room or a place to do yoga, they would then change that balance and say, I'd like to make the attic a living space. We now push the insulation up to the roof deck and have to change its balance. How does it ventilate or not ventilate? And those are all characteristics of different products on the market that can do air sealing as well as thermal insulation. So lots of good choices. Each one of them fits one application better than the other. So a professional like yourself has to go in and say, I can put that in this room. Right. In that room here, the little knee wall with the little funny wall there, we'll have to foam that. We can put some fiberglass and some cellulose over there. So I'm a big fan of insulation companies that know and have most of those options, and they can sit with you and your client and say, these are the best things we can use in those spots, because each one has its features and benefits.
Yep, that's my subcontractor. They do it all. So I can kind of pick and choose when we're doing a remodel and educate even walls that aren't even opened.
Correct.
That's the blown in.
That's right.
And it's really great as a contractor to have a one-stop shop, a one subcontractor that does all of that when we need it.
Absolutely. I always call them a thermal performance specialist. I want someone to come in that understands the building. So the last thing about that, though, is we have to remember that with each choice that you pick, what are the implications that it has, right? So as I use spray foam, I'm tightening up a wall. As I use cellulose, is the wall caulked and sealed properly? Each one of those pieces of change, again, as you mentioned earlier, changing the thermodynamics of the wall, right? It's losing heat slower. The air leakage changed, so I have to make sure I'm always making other choices. But each option has things that improve comfort and need to be addressed in terms of how it affects the building.
Great.
Great
Thank you
pleasure.
so much. That was
Nice to meet you.
awesome.
Thank you, sir.